In the spring of 2026, the United States and Iran went to war, and the world held its breath. This is not a prediction. This is not a theory. This is what happened and why. 47 years of threats, sanctions, assassinations, and proxy wars finally exploded. On February 28, 2026, the missiles flew, and nothing would ever be the same. EncycloMan takes you through every single event, from the first warning sign to the last explosion. This is the full, complete, unfiltered story of the 2026 US-Iran war. To understand the 2026 war, you must go back to 1979, the year Iran became America's enemy. The Islamic Revolution overthrew America's closest Middle Eastern ally in a single year. Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. 52 Americans held hostage for 444 days. That wound never healed. It still hadn't healed by 2026. From 1979 onward, the U.S. imposed wave after wave of crippling economic sanctions on Iran. Iran's oil exports collapsed. Its currency lost 90% of its value. Its people suffered. Iran responded by building proxy forces across the Middle East: Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. Every group Iran funded was a weapon aimed directly at American allies and interests. By 2020, the U.S. had assassinated Iran's most powerful military commander, General Qasem Soleimani. Iran swore revenge. For years they planned. In 2026, the moment arrived. For 20 years, the world argued about Iran's nuclear program. Was it peaceful or military? By late 2025, the argument was over. The intelligence was undeniable. U.S. and Israeli intelligence confirmed Iran had enriched uranium to 84% purity, weapons grade. One more step, and Iran would have a nuclear bomb. That step was weeks away. Iran had also developed ballistic missiles capable of reaching Israel, Saudi Arabia, and U.S. bases. With a nuclear warhead on top of those missiles, the entire Middle East was at risk. The IAEA, the UN's nuclear watchdog, issued its most serious warning in 30 years of monitoring. They described Iran's enrichment timeline as a matter of extreme urgency. Israel declared publicly, "We will not allow Iran to become a nuclear state, full stop." Prime Minister Netanyahu gave a 90-day deadline. The clock started ticking on December 1st, 2025. Donald Trump returned to the White House in January 2025 with one promise regarding Iran. He called it Maximum Pressure 2.0, harder, faster, and more absolute than anything before. Within weeks, Trump reimposed every sanction Obama and Biden had lifted and added new ones. Iran's oil exports dropped to near zero. The regime's income collapsed almost overnight. During his State of the Union on February 24, 2026, Trump addressed Iran directly from Congress. He said, "The United States will not permit a nuclear Iran. We are prepared to act tonight." While the U.S. built up its military, Iran was already collapsing from the inside. In October 2025, the largest protests in Iranian history erupted across more than 120 cities. The trigger was simple: a loaf of bread tripled in price in a single week. For millions of Iranians who had endured sanctions for years, that was the final breaking point. Khamenei ordered the IRGC, Iran's elite revolutionary guard, to crush the uprising by any means. On January 8th and 10th, 2026, live ammunition was fired into crowds. Thousands were killed. The footage of children dying in Iranian streets outraged governments on every continent. The world was watching, and the fuse was lit. Even with the military buildup in place, secret talks were happening behind closed doors. Oman and Switzerland both hosted quiet negotiations between U.S. and Iranian diplomats in February. On February 20th, Iran's foreign minister flew to Geneva under complete media blackout. Sources inside the room said both sides were within reach of a framework agreement. The U.S. demanded complete cessation of uranium enrichment and full IAEA access immediately. Iran's negotiators said they could agree, but Khamenei had to approve. He refused. On February 25th, Iran's foreign minister told reporters, "Peace is still possible. Trust the process." Within 48 hours, that same man was fleeing Tehran as American bombs fell on his city. At 2:14 a.m. Tehran time, on February 28, 2026, the first Tomahawk missiles entered Iranian airspace. 112 cruise missiles were launched simultaneously from U.S. Navy destroyers. Primary targets in the first wave, Iran's Fordo underground enrichment facility and Natanz. Both sites had been hardened for years specifically to survive aerial bombardment. It didn't matter. Israeli F-35 jets struck Iran's northern missile launch sites from multiple directions simultaneously. The coordination between U.S. and Israeli forces was described as the most precise joint operation in history. Wave 2 hit Iran's air defense network. The S-300 and Bavar 307 systems were destroyed first. Without air defense, Iran was completely open. Wave 3 came within 30 minutes. Wave 3 targeted Iran's ballistic missile stockpiles, naval bases, and IRGC command centers. By 6 a.m. Tehran time, Iran's entire military infrastructure was either destroyed or severely crippled. The operation was named Epic Fury, a name chosen by U.S. Central Command weeks in advance. Within 4 hours of its launch, every major Iranian nuclear and military target had been struck. Iran's response came within 3 hours. Hundreds of ballistic missiles and drone swarms launched. The targets? U.S. military bases in Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. U.S. and Saudi air defense systems intercepted the majority, but not all of them got through. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest U.S. military facility in the Middle East, was hit. Iran activated its proxy network simultaneously. Hezbollah fathered thousands of rockets into Israel. Houthi forces in Yemen launched long-range missiles at Saudi oil infrastructure. Aramco was hit. Dubai International Airport, one of the world's busiest, was struck by Iranian drones. All flights to and from the Middle East were suspended within 20 minutes of the strike. Within 24 hours of the first strikes, global oil prices had surged by 60%. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of all global oil flows, was now a war zone. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell over 2,200 points in the first trading session. European and Asian markets followed, the worst single-day global crash since COVID in 2020. Governments across the developing world warned of imminent food supply chain collapse. Pakistan, a nuclear-armed country bordering Iran, declared a state of national emergency. Inside Tehran, 17 million people woke on February 28th to the sound of explosions across the city. Power was cut across 3/4 of the capital within hours of the first strikes. Civilian casualties in the first 72 hours were estimated between 3,000 and 8,000 by aid agencies. A journalist for Reuters managed to broadcast live from central Tehran on day 2. She described streets with no electricity, no water, no mobile signal, and smoke on every horizon. By mid-March 2026, the U.S. military claimed Iran's ballistic missile capacity was functionally destroyed. The nuclear program, the stated reason for the war, was confirmed destroyed. But the war created a new problem for every problem it solved. Iran's regime was still standing. Khamenei appeared on state television on March 5th, defiant, unbowed, and still in power. The 2026 Iran-US war changed the Middle East, the global economy, and the rules of modern conflict. That is the complete story, every fact, every strike, every decision. This is exactly what EncycloMan exists for, the full picture when the world needs clarity. Do you think this war was justified? Drop your answer in the comments. Every single comment gets read. I am your host. This is EncycloMan. Stay curious, keep questioning, never stop digging, because the most important stories are always the ones that are hardest to tell.